Hey, everybody, we're going to pick up our conversation we started last week. So if you haven't listened to last week's episode, go back and listen to that episode, and then you can listen to this episode. This is part 2 of a 2-part series. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to the Friday Habit with Mark Labriola and Benjamin Manley. The Friday Habit is for small business owners, freelancers, and creatives who are ready to take their business to the next level. Join us as we discover how to apply the strategies we learned to grow our businesses, make more money, and live every day like it's Friday.
Speaking of, high performance team, you said like respect is a huge ingredient. What other things do you see mistakes people make with their teams? Like, I mentioned the like getting on people to perform harder. It sounds like part of it's inspiring your team. Part of it's like respecting what they have to say and their ideas and the problems they bring to you. But yeah, what other things would you say are like things that people overlook or other things that you can do to like help that team perform well?
Here's one saying that I've got. I've got these like 50. I'm known as PR. So PR's 50 management maxims. One of them is the absent one safe among us? How are we talking about other people not in the room? And
okay.
So that's a thought. It's really not demanding stuff of your team as much as showing them the way. It's a required reading book for us, and it's one of the most powerful books on leadership that I've ever read. And I'm kind of an expert at bringing leadership into organizations, and it's called Leadership and Self-Deception by the Arbinger Group. And if you haven't read that, it's required reading for us. And a lot of us are operating from what they call being in the box, where you're defensive and you're justifying, and is what I call jabbing. We have jabbing communication. We're justifying, we're advising without their requesting you to advise them, or you're blaming. And teams, high performance teams learn, and poor performance teams blame. The opposite of learning is blaming. And there's a whole lot too of, if you want a great team, show up as a great team member. Do the work internally. Go through your mantra, or spit in the mirror on who you are and where you're going. And one thing I find a lot of leaders, especially of smaller companies, that we work with over 2,000 companies. They're called Main Street companies. They're $5 million or less a year. And we work with a lot bigger ones. But so many of the CEOs or the owners there of those businesses, they get so on to them. They're so critical of themselves. And I remember my wife was getting ready. She's beautiful. I mean, I'm married way up. Okay, folks. And I remember her getting ready. We're going to go to this event, and she was commenting on her body as she was putting all her makeup on and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, about every 3.5 years, I say something really, really intelligent to my wife, but it's few and far between.
Hey, at least you're consistent,
Yeah, there you go. So I go, stop talking that way to my friend. Nobody talks to my best friend that way. And she's like ready to go into a fight, and she's like, oh, it was a good connection. We were late to the party. So it was like, okay, folks, if you had a friend that spoke to you the way you speak to yourself, would they still be your friend? Stop building the case again. You're running into enough obstacles in life. You don't have to be one of them, Stop building the case against yourself and build a case every day in the morning before you go to bed. Build a case for yourself of what you're doing and where you're going and what you're equipped with, and the Almighty's blessing, or however you get your mojo, man. Just dive into it and come to the team built up from a place of abundance and contribution rather than scarcity and lack and neediness.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% makes sense. Yeah. I think that makes sense. I definitely think about that too, is like some of the perfectionism that comes in too as a business owner. Sometimes you just question yourself and you can see all these other things in better ways you could do it. And there's always like something over the hill and you're like, this is never good enough. And yeah, if you saw somebody else's business that looked like yours, you'd be like, man, that's awesome. Like, and you probably might even feel jealous of it. You'd be like, man, that guy's got, a lot of cool stuff going on. And like, I don't know, you might even feel insecure, but sometimes you're really hard on yourself. Yeah. I've experienced the same.
They're comparing where they're at with perfection or where they want to be, which doesn't exist, instead of celebrating the progress that they made. Don't demand perfection, just celebrate progress. Look how high you've climbed. Look where you are. Well, I know, but we're doing the Michael Jackson moonwalk. We're walking back. Your company's gonna, what are you make your learning greater than your pain and greater than your loss. Just turn your lemons into lemonade, and it's not just the motivational speaker who lives down in a van down near the river, which I do live in a van down there. No, I'm just kidding. But it's like, come on, folks, we need all of you to show up. So quit picking on yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, from a team perspective, it's really helpful to think about, as a leader, what can you do to make that team more high performance? What do you think as like a team member, if you're in a situation where you're like, man, maybe you have a pretty good boss or a good leader, but what could you do to make that team more healthy if you're not the leader? Is there anything you'd recommend as a team member, what they can do to contribute?
Yeah, you bring in what you have in you. You're going to export whatever's on the inside of you. It's interesting. There's I'll for a lack of time here, I'll just talk about state management or your emotional state. What is your emotional state? It's how you feel about yourself and the world around you. You're enough, you're not enough, you're more than able, you're incapable, it's impossible, it's possible. We can do it. We can do it. It's impossible. It's like, so you have this emotional state, and whoever has the most dominant state dominates. So I've got experiments I've run myself that are just almost scary, just how true this is. But when you bring your state into a room, have you ever been in a room, Ben, where everybody's like light and it's kind of fun and it's just chattering and all that, and then somebody like comes in like with a black cloud over their head, and it's just like everybody just like boom, it just like puts a downer, and just the laughter goes, the conversation is stilted and stifled, and and conversely, somebody like people are like, just waiting to die, watching the grass grow, and then somebody comes in, how are you guys doing? And they come in with energy and like, oh, yeah, so
yes,
it's amazing. So as a team member, no matter where you are on the human chain, an amoeba or you're, an intelligent being or whatever, wherever you are on the food chain here, it's like, come from a place where you're built up, ready to contribute. Have enough reservoir within yourself to absorb somebody's bad attitude or negative response, and we allow a little twitch of somebody's eye to dominate our day, And so it's like we've got to get built up on the inside in order for us to contribute as a team member. If we come in there bankrupt and overdrawn in our accounts, our neediness is gonna also affect our environment. Does that make sense, or it might be too direct here?
100% makes sense. No, absolutely. I mean, I've experienced something very similar, and I have a couple people on my team in particular. I think about that every time they come in to your room, that they change the atmosphere in a positive way, especially, and be like, they can like 100% like turn it around. And that's something I think about too a lot, is like when somebody's struggling on a project, the first thing I'm concerned about is making sure I know that person knows that I think they're doing a good job and they're doing their best, that I believe in them, and like break them out of funk, do something weird. I don't care if it's something stupid, but like make them laugh a little bit, like, all right, shrug it off a little bit. All right, first let's just like lighten the mood. Don't worry. It's not the end of the world. And then from there, once you can lighten the mood, then it's like, all right, now let's think about some solutions here. I feel like being a leader, that's such like a strange thing that I don't think a lot of people think about. It's just like, sometimes you have to, I don't know. It's even like with kids. I don't know if you experience this, raising kids or even with your siblings, but it's like sometimes a kid will get into an attitude where you can't fight them directly, Instead, what you have to do is kind of throw them off. I mean, there's even this parenting techniques. Yeah, exactly. Interrupt the behavior. Exactly. It's like maybe a kid's throwing a tantrum and you get down on the floor and you start throwing a tantrum harder than them. And they're going to freak out. They're going to be like, what is happening? And they're just going to be like, look at you weird. And they're like, hey, you want to go grab some popcorn? Let's go do something. And they're like, okay. So like sometimes just like doing something that's a little random, bringing up something funny, just like, hey, let's just distract for a second and now let's refocus and look at this from a positive angle. That's such a small thing, but I think it's such a helpful tool as a leader. Just be like, you know what, let's just keep it a little bit light. This is not life or death most of the time, and like let's keep it fun.
Perfect.
So
really, really good.
I 100%.
Yeah, it's like before you criticize the team, just take inventory of what are you contributing with your work, but also with the attitude and the mood and the atmosphere. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not doing anything. Well, your attitude is speaking so loud, I didn't even hear what you said. What? So, it's we're contributing, whether to the negative or positive. And I like to think about this as a team member. There's no such thing as a neutral transaction. Even the slightest, tilting your head, hello, or no, even nonverbals, either it's positive and building the bridge between you and that person, or it's negative or tearing down the bridge between you and the person. So it's never a neutral. It's always one way or the other. So when you think in those terms, you just want to let the best version of yourself show up. You can be a pessimist or an optimist. You might as well choose to be an optimist. You'll live happier. So,
absolutely, yeah. If Mark was here, he'd be nodding his head 1,000%. I'm like the negative one compared to Mark, so you can imagine how off the charts he is. I think he broke the scale. So, yeah. So, this has been so helpful. Can you tell us, just before we start wrapping things up, can you tell us a little bit about your book, Power to Create?
Yeah, Power to Create is a book. I have it right here. It's from a faith perspective, so I wrote it to pastors and Christian business owners, but it really applies to anybody regardless of religion or non-religion, because it has all these growth principles of coaching that we bring in, and people spend a lot of money to bring into their businesses. So it's a very inexpensive way to get that. And I've heard from people all over the world that have read that's really moved their thinking. So we actually start with defining money and your relationship with money, Right. And, I'll ask an audience, I said, well, how many want more money? I do. Everybody raise their hand. And then I said, hey, have you ever seen anybody without any money? They come into a whole bunch of money at one time and it ruins them. Oh, yeah, I've seen money ruin people. Okay, so you think money ruins people, but you want more of it.
You're like, wait a second.
There's a cognitive dissonance there. Mm-hmm. And so the first part of it, I go through to help you get into a healthy relationship with money. Then I redefine wealth, not as something you gather. Those are more the fruits or the results of wealth. Wealth is I've defined it as it's a creative process that's creating value to serve others. And we talk about real practical ways of how to actually do that, regardless of where you are in the company and what economic system wherever you are in economically, wherever you are, or even the economy being up or down. So it's really, really powerful. People really enjoy that. So
that's awesome. It sounds like there's a lot of really great stuff that you can get. I mean, gosh, books are amazing to me. It's like the amount of value you can get out of a book for the price a book costs, the amount of stuff you can learn. So definitely check out Power to Create. It sounds really awesome. Well, let me recap a couple of things that I personally have learned from this conversation, and then we'll wrap up here. But a couple of things you said that really stuck with me is more important than strategy, marketing, or anything else is the tenacity and grit, which you kind of demonstrated from man's crazy background and some childhood situations that you really went through. One of the missing ingredients of creating a high performance team is respect, and it's not something that you demand; it's a gift that you give someone. I also think that one thing you said that really stuck to me is respect is valuing the differences without having to agree. I also think that when you said when someone brings you a problem, ask them, how would you like to solve that problem? I think that's a really good response. If someone's bringing you something, to help them be more solution focused. And you also said, if you had a friend that talked about you the way you think about yourself, would they still be your friend? So that's going to be sticking with me for a while. But is there anything that you would recommend to our audience as a practical step people can take in the next week to help grow their business? Or, just anything from this conversation, you're like, hey, here's the next step. If something stood out in this conversation, what would be a next step they could take that's practical this next week?
Well, I tell you, in growing your business, get real clear on the problem you solve, and really spend more time than you think on that. Get super detailed with the problem you solve. And the 3 P's here is you define the problem, make a super big promise to solve that problem, and provide proof with past people that you've already solved that problem with the promise you gave. And it makes the sales process so much easier. We've hugely grown from barely get by to multiple $1 million coaching company right now. So,
man, sounds simple, but that's challenging. And I think the way you put it is like a really good place to start for people. So that's awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show. This has been awesome. I feel like we've learned a ton from you. Can you tell us a little bit about next steps people can take with the Grow Plan?
Yeah. What I like to do is if people want to get a hold of me, they can email me, Tim@Redmond Growth, or go to our website. If they will talk about how much they love Friday Habit and they love you guys, or give you a 5-star review, we have a growth plan that we do where we look at your business, we look at where you are, we actually build a whole new business model around that. It's called a capacity model. Based on that new model, we extrapolate that for 3 years of where you're going to be in 3 years with this new way of thinking.
Awesome.
And then we give you 8 to 10 concrete action steps to get there. It's powerful. People usually add another $100,000 to their business just following that in the next 12 months. We normally charge $2,500 for that, Ben. We'll waive it. If they talk about how much they love Friday Habit, we'll waive that $2,500 fee. Email me or get a hold of us on the website. I'd love to be able to have you. Even if you've already got a coach or you're not sure about it, all I need you to have is have a business, and then we'll walk you through, and it'll be a whole new set of eyes that you look at your business through. It's just amazing. So,
I love it, man. Thank you so much. That's huge value, and I definitely encourage you guys to go check that out. Also, go to thefridayhabit.com and find show notes for the episode. You can also find links to our websites, ways to get in touch. And at the bottom of the page, you can download our guide to the Friday Habit System that's going to show you how to set aside one full day each week dedicated to working on your business instead of in your business. And thanks for listening to The Friday Habit. Until next time, live every day like it's Friday.